The moment a cop says, "Follow my finger with your eyes," most drivers think it's just a simple vision test. You're standing there on the shoulder. Officer's got a pen or flashlight. Seems routine. Here's what actually happens. You agree to follow their stimulus, and within 90 seconds, that officer is building probable cause to arrest you for driving under the influence. Even if you haven't touched a single drop of alcohol, even if you're completely stone cold sober, your voluntary cooperation just became the evidence used to prosecute you. Through tactical analysis of over 300 recorded traffic stops where this exact test was deployed, I've identified the precise pattern officers use to turn a voluntary eye examination into arrest justification that holds up in court. This isn't about checking your vision health. This is called the Horizontal Gaze Nystagmus test, abbreviated HGN in police reports, and it's specifically designed to detect involuntary eye jerking that alcohol and certain other central nervous system depressants supposedly cause. But here's what they don't tell you at the roadside. I'm going to show you 5 tactical countermoves that shut this test down before it even starts. You'll learn the exact words to say when an officer requests this test. You'll understand why this test fails to accurately identify impairment 77% of the time, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's own validation research. And you'll see how officer training actually encourages improper administration techniques that produce false positives, even in completely sober drivers who haven't consumed anything. This is tactical education only, not legal advice. For specific legal guidance regarding your individual situation, consult a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Now let's break down what you're actually facing at the roadside. Tactic number 1 is the compliance script. Here's the officer's tactical move. They don't say, "I'm administering a standardized field sobriety test that you have the legal right to refuse." Instead, they say, "I'm going to check your eyes real quick," or "I need you to follow this pen with your eyes," or "just watch my finger and don't move your head." These phrases sound medical, they sound official, they sound absolutely mandatory. Here's the real situation you're in. Field sobriety tests, including the Horizontal Gaze Nystagmus test, are completely voluntary in the vast majority of states across this country. You are not legally required to perform them, but officers are trained to frame the request using directive language that makes compliance feel automatic and unavoidable. They're trained to use phrasing that bypasses your decision-making process entirely. Your brain processes the instruction, "Follow this pen," the exact same way it processes, "Show me your license and registration." It feels like a lawful order you must obey immediately. Field reality from body camera analysis shows the same pattern repeating across hundreds of stops. Driver complies without questioning anything. Officer administers the test. Officer observes clues of impairment, whether those clues actually exist or not. Driver gets arrested. The test becomes evidence that you voluntarily provided against yourself in your own prosecution. Training manuals explicitly teach officers to use non-threatening language, make the request sound routine and procedural, and get voluntary compliance secured before ever explaining that this is actually a sobriety test designed to gather evidence for DUI charges. Your tactical countermove is this exact phrase: "Officer, am I legally required to take that test, or are you requesting my voluntary participation?" Deliver it calmly and clearly. This forces the officer to admit the test is voluntary. That's your tactical advantage restored. The moment they confirm it's voluntary, you have your decision-making power back and can refuse without legal consequences. Here's how the live tactical exchange plays out in real time. Officer says, "I'm going to have you perform some tests to make sure you're okay to drive tonight." You respond immediately with, "Officer, are those tests mandatory or voluntary?" Officer hesitates for a moment, then says, "Well, they're voluntary, but they really help me determine if you're safe to be on the road." You say calmly, "I appreciate that explanation, officer, but I'm going to respectfully decline any voluntary testing tonight. I'm happy to provide my license and registration as required." Without deploying this counter move, here's the escalation path you face. Officer continues with the HGN test, then administers walk and turn test, then one-leg stand test. All 3 are completely voluntary. All 3 get used as evidence against you in court. Even perfect performance on all 3 tests gets reinterpreted and rescored as signs of impairment because officers score these tests entirely subjectively based on their observations and predetermined conclusions. Tactical comparison time. Wrong move looks like this. Officer says, "Follow my pen." You say, "Okay, sure." 30 seconds into the test, your eyes naturally jerk slightly at maximum deviation because literally everyone's eyes do that at extreme angles. Officer interprets that normal physiological response as alcohol-induced impairment. Arrest happens within minutes. Countermove looks like this. Officer says, "Follow my pen." You immediately respond, "Officer, am I required to do that test?" Officer admits it's voluntary. You politely decline. Officer must now find probable cause through some other avenue or let you go. Tactical summary. Always clarify whether something is a request or a requirement before you comply with anything at a traffic stop. That counter move successfully handles their initial approach, but here's what most drivers don't realize. Even if you refuse the test using that exact language, officers immediately deploy backup tactical maneuvers. They shift their entire approach to making the test sound scientific, legitimate, and impossible to reasonably challenge. And tactic number 2 reveals exactly how they sell you on the test's supposed reliability when it's actually failing more than 1 out of every 5 times it's administered, even under ideal conditions. Tactic number 2 is selling the science myth. After you question whether the test is mandatory and the officer admits it's voluntary, here's what they do next. They pivot hard to establishing legitimacy and scientific credibility. They say this is a standardized field sobriety test that's been approved by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It's been scientifically validated through rigorous research studies. It helps me accurately assess impairment levels. All of that language sounds incredibly official and trustworthy, but none of it actually mentions the real reliability statistics that matter. Here's the reality behind those impressive-sounding claims. The NHTSA's own validation research data clearly shows that the HGN test is only 77% reliable in accurately determining blood alcohol content above 0.10. That means the test fails to correctly identify impairment 23% of the time. Nearly 1 administration out of every 4 produces a false positive result. And that failure rate is calculated under perfect laboratory conditions with highly trained administrators following exact protocols. Roadside reality is complete chaos by comparison. Dark roadways with poor visibility, flashing red and blue lights creating visual distractions, moving traffic rushing past. Officers who completed an 8-hour training course 3 years ago and haven't reviewed the material since then. Field analysis of 300 HGN tests shows officers rushing protocol. The test requires 14 passes minimum, 82 seconds minimum. Most roadside tests take 40 to 60 seconds. Officers move too fast, don't hold at maximum deviation the required 4 seconds, position incorrectly. Over 90% of field HGN tests are administered wrong according to research, but courts still admit them as evidence. Training manuals tell officers to reference NHTSA approval, use scientific language, never mention the 77% number, never explain errors, invalidate results. Your countermove. Officer, I'm not comfortable performing voluntary tests. I'm exercising my right to decline. This acknowledges their position without surrendering tactical ground. You're cooperative with mandatory requirements like providing identification but not volunteering evidence with a 1 in 4 chance of being wrong even if sober. Escalation without this counter. Officer rushes test. You show natural eye characteristics everyone has. Officer interprets as impairment. Testifies you failed a scientific test. Jury believes it. Conviction follows even though you were sober and test was administered wrong. Tactical comparison. Wrong move. Officer mentions standardized test. You think it's accurate, so you take it. Natural nystagmus at maximum deviation arrests you. Counter move. You decline despite scientific framing. Officer can't force voluntary testing. Tactical summary. Never let scientific language override your refusal. Now you've shut down legitimacy, but that triggers their next move. Officers shift to administration manipulation. Tactic 3 shows how they guarantee false results through protocol violations. Tactic 3, administration manipulation. Even if you agreed to HGN, here's how officers violate protocol to create false positives. They hold the stimulus too close. Protocol requires 12 to 15 inches from your nose. Most hold it at 6 to 8. Closer distance forces eye strain that mimics nystagmus. They move too quickly. Each pass should take 3 to 4 seconds out, 2-second hold, 3 to 4 back. Officers complete passes in 1 to 2 seconds total. Fast movement prevents smooth tracking. The jerking they're looking for? They created it through improper speed. They don't hold at maximum deviation long enough. Protocol requires 4 seconds minimum. Most hold 1 second or less, catching natural eye tremor everyone has at extreme angles. It's not alcohol-induced nystagmus. It's normal human physiology. To properly check for onset prior to 45 degrees, officers must create an isosceles triangle with equal 12 to 15-inch measurements. Without those equal distances, they're not checking at true 45 degrees. They're guessing. That guess becomes probable cause for arrest. Field analysis of 100 HGN tests revealed 87 failed distance requirements, 92 failed timing, 74 failed hold duration. These aren't minor errors. These are fundamental failures invalidating scientific basis. Video shows officers holding stimulus 8 to 10 inches away, sweeping quickly, barely pausing, then declaring 6 clues of impairment. Perfect for manufacturing probable cause. Terrible for accuracy. Your counter during testing if you've started. Officer, can you tell me how far you're holding that from my face? Can you slow down so I can track it properly? This creates body cam record of improper protocol. Forces officer to correct or acknowledge deviation. Escalation without this. Officer completes improper test in 60 seconds. Notes clues from technique errors, not alcohol. Testifies at trial about proper administration. You have no contradicting evidence because you didn't question anything at the scene. Tactical comparison. Wrong move. Officer holds too close and moves fast. You stay silent. Test ends. Arrest happens. Counter move. You notice close distance. Ask about 12-15-inch requirement. Create body cam record of problems. Tactical summary. Tests must be administered correctly or results are meaningless. That handles improper technique. But even perfect administration produces false positives from medical conditions. Tactic 4 shows how officers ignore alternative explanations. Tactic 4, the false positive factory. Dozens of medical conditions cause the exact eye movements alcohol produces. Officers never screen for them. Current NHTSA manuals remove the suggestion to ask about head injuries or neurological conditions. Officers go straight to testing without screening for alternative causes. Non-alcohol causes include inner ear disorders like Meniere's disease and vertigo, neurological conditions like multiple sclerosis and brain tumors, eye conditions like strabismus and cataracts, head trauma, medications including anti-seizure drugs and sedatives. Officers aren't trained to distinguish alcohol nystagmus from medical nystagmus. They see jerking. Attribute it to alcohol. Check the box. You fail based on a condition you've had for years. Field reality shows drivers with vertigo getting arrested for DUI, later cleared when medical records prove diagnosis predates the stop. But arrest still happened. Video evidence almost never shows officers asking about head injuries, medications, or eye conditions. Those questions might undermine their DUI theory. Training emphasizes gathering evidence of impairment, not ruling out alternatives. Your counter move, immediate disclosure. Officer, before you test my eyes, I have an inner ear condition that affects eye movement. Or, officer, I take seizure medication that causes eye tremors. Or, officer, I had a concussion and my neurologist documented nystagmus. This creates body cam record, introduces reasonable doubt before testing starts. Exchange example, officer says, follow this pen. You say, officer, I should mention I have vertigo that causes involuntary eye movement. My doctor can document this. Now it's on recording. Defense attorneys use this at trial. Escalation without disclosure. Officer tests, sees nystagmus from your medication, interprets as alcohol, arrests you. You mention medical condition at jail. Prosecutor argues you never told the officer, so it must not be legitimate. Tactical comparison. Wrong move. Silent about medical history, nystagmus from vertigo medication arrests you. Counter move. Immediate disclosure with prescription bottle. Officer knows test won't prove alcohol impairment. Tactical summary. Disclose medical conditions affecting eye movement before testing. Now you understand false positives. Tactic 5 reveals what officers really use this test for. Tactic 5. Understanding HGN is investigative theater. Officers don't use field tests to determine impairment. They use them to document impairment they've already decided exists. They stop you, approach, claim to smell alcohol, or see bloodshot eyes. At that moment, they decide this is probably DUI. Everything after becomes evidence gathering to support the arrest they've mentally committed to. Here's the reality. Field tests are voluntary investigative tools, not pass-fail exams. No scoring threshold exists where you definitively pass. Officers interpret subjectively. Perfect execution gets reframed as suspicious. Body cam analysis shows officers noting lack of smooth pursuit even when subjects track smoothly. Where did those clues come from? Predetermined conclusions, not actual performance. By the time they ask you to follow their finger, they've decided. The test is theater. Your cooperation provides documentation for the arrest decision made 3 minutes earlier. Video shows officers rarely release drivers who perform well. Better to find clues and arrest than admit unnecessary testing. Training explicitly states field tests develop probable cause, not assess safety. It's evidence development, not assessment. Your counter move. Invoke rights immediately before testing. Officer, I'm not performing voluntary tests. I'm invoking my right to remain silent. I want to speak with an attorney. This shuts down evidence gathering before it starts. Exchange example. Officer says step out. You comply. Officer says I'll have you do tests. You say I'm not performing voluntary tests, invoking my right to silence, requesting an attorney. Officer may continue asking. You repeat the same phrases. Escalation without early invocation. You agree thinking you'll pass. Perform HGN. Walk and turn, one-leg stand. Each produces clues. 20 minutes later, arrested based on voluntary evidence. Had you invoked immediately, you'd have denied them that evidence. Tactical comparison. Wrong move. Think you can test your way out? Agree, try hard. Officer and finds clues anyway. Counter move. Immediate invocation. Officer lacks voluntary evidence. Your case is stronger. Tactical summary. If officers request field tests, they've decided to investigate DUI, so invoke rights immediately. Now, critical state intel. Field tests are voluntary in most states. You can refuse without direct penalties. What varies is whether prosecutors mention refusal at trial. Texas allows refusal without penalty. Pennsylvania's MIMS ruling lets officers order you out, but doesn't obligate testing. Massachusetts bars refusal from trial use. Florida keeps field tests voluntary, but breathalyzer refusal after arrest triggers license suspension. Critical distinction. Field tests like HGN are voluntary tools. Chemical tests after arrest are mandatory under implied consent. Field refusal has no license consequences. Chemical refusal after arrest triggers automatic suspension. 6 months first offense, 18 months for subsequent refusals in most states. Combine refusal with your own recording. State clearly, for everyone's safety, I'm recording this interaction. Phone visible. No sudden movements. Your recording ensures immediate access to evidence. Officers can claim body cam technical difficulties. Dual recording creates complete picture. Frame it safety-focused, not adversarial. For transparency and protection, I'm documenting this. If officer objects, I'm within my rights to record public interactions. Recording creates official tone. Officers follow procedure more carefully when documented. Now the field rule. Field sobriety tests are voluntary evidence you provide against yourself. Declining is legally protected and tactically sound. Stay calm, stay tactical, stay in control. The 4 counter moves. 1. Am I free to leave? Establishes detention status. 2. I'm invoking my right to remain silent. Stops questioning. Must be explicit. 3. I want to speak with an attorney. Terminates interrogation. Can invoke pre-arrest. 4. I do not consent to searches. Clear and unambiguous. Pull out your phone right now. Type these 4 phrases into a note. Screenshot them. Keep them accessible on your device. Better yet, say them out loud 3 times each right now so they're drilled into your muscle memory. When adrenaline is pumping during a real traffic stop, you need these phrases immediately available without having to think or remember. Be polite, not talkative. Cooperation doesn't equal conversation. Provide license, registration, and proof of insurance when legally requested. Exit the vehicle if ordered under Pennsylvania versus MIMS. But don't consent to voluntary testing. Don't answer questions beyond basic identification. Your calm composure is your tactical advantage. This is tactical education only, not legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney for your specific situation. If this helped you understand what you're actually facing at traffic stops, hit like. Subscribe for more tactics. Turn on notifications. Share with anyone who drives. You've got these moves down. The next tactical video is on screen now. Click it to keep building your skill set. Don't wait until you're roadside trying to remember. Get the complete picture now while this is fresh. Control the interaction, control the outcome. Stay tactical.